Okay, we are going to try to blast through this training. We have a lot of things that have changed, and I've shortened my training. So, some of what you're going to need to learn for poll worker training will be other videos that will be posted here for the new voting equipment and for the poll books. But we're going to start by going through some of the law. Welcome everybody who's going to be working with Burnett County elections, and we appreciate you guys all pitching in to help. I will skip a few pages here that aren't that really don't apply. This is our new Verity paper solution. There are 3 different units that will come to each polling place, at least these. Some of the bigger polling places may get an extra check-in station, Verity Print, and maybe an extra touch writer or 2. The Verity Print will be the one on the check-in table where the poll book will be. And most voters will probably just want the paper ballot, so the poll book tag will print out. You'll scan it with the scanner, and then that'll print a paper ballot for that voter, which you'll hand to them, and they'll go to the table, sit down, and vote their ballot. The Verity Touch Writer is just a way for people who want to use a machine. It's a ballot marking device. If that's the way they choose, then the tag that comes out of the poll book, the poll worker will take that tag over to this machine, which will be sitting over in a more private location. It does have privacy screens along the sides of it. And it'll also have a scanner like this one does, and you'll scan that barcode, set that up, and then the voter will take over. And when the voter is finished, there will be a print button in the bottom of the screen, and they'll print their voted ballot. And once both of these types of ballots are voted, of course this one will come out voted, you'll go over, the voter will go over to the Verity Scan, and they'll feed their ballot in the Verity Scan to scan their ballot so that it gets counted. So that's how this new system is going to work. So you'll have Verity devices that'll be sealed nightly during early voting, and obviously at the end of election day, your poll book cases, they get sealed nightly during early voting, and again at the end of election day. I already showed you you'll have the access code on demand scanners connected to these 2 devices. And once again, all completed forms go in a red zipper bag. Preparing for election day. If you're new to this and you're a judge, I highly recommend that you get in touch with all of the people that are working with you once we have sent that out and you know who they are. I would also recommend that you visit the polling place for the first time before it's election day. Make sure you know where that place is at so you're not trying to find it in the dark. Check and review your election materials. We'll help you with that when you pick up, and there will probably be some things that we'll teach you when you do pick up that we don't know exactly how we're going to do right now because all this is so new. So things like this equipment list and chain of custody, it will change drastically. We don't know exactly what this is going to look like yet, so I'm going to skip it, but this is what you're going to get whenever you pick up. So so you'll know exactly what equipment is coming to you, and you'll sign off on that kind of stuff. So remember, it's illegal for a person to operate a sound amplification device or a vehicle with a loudspeaker within 1,000 feet of the polling place. No electioneering, insignias, emblems, badges, etc. on clothing, hats, bags, etc. bearing references to a candidate, measure, or political party within 100 feet of the polling place building entrance by anyone, including voters. A person may not use a wireless communication device within 100 feet of a voting station. Okay, it's very important that you understand that's voting station. That's a poll booth. Okay, that's where you would be actually Marking your ballot, that's a voting station. Person may not use any mechanical or electronic means of recording images or sound within 100 feet of a voting station. The presiding judge may require a person who violates this section to turn off their device or to leave the polling place. Doesn't apply to an election worker conducting the officer's official duties, as in calling our office on your cell phone when you need us. So there's a notice that you can post that backs that up, and it says the same thing. It also explains what a voting station is, in case someone asks. So when you're setting up the polling location, you're going to post your distance markers outside 100 feet from the door that enters the building where your polling place is at. Obviously, there's going to be times when that will not work because it's in the middle of a street or something like that. So you'll just have to use your judgment, place the markers where it would make sense. Post your sample ballot displays, informational signs such as the voters' rights poster, notice of voter complaint, all those things, including the notice of voting order priority. That is a form that basically says if I see a voter that looks like they're having difficulty walking, moving, they may be injured or just handicapped, I can go ask that voter if they would like to be brought to the front of the line, and that notice of voting order priority gives you that right to do that. So if anyone was to complain, which I hope no one would, but if they did, you can show them that that is the law that says you can bring that person to the front. Get your voting equipment set up as quickly as possible and get it turned on. It takes the new systems quite a while to come up, so make sure that you get it turned on as quickly as possible. And there will be a blue seal on the door of the scanner, the door of the Verity print, and the door of the ballot marking device. Inside the case, there's going to be a seal that will be sealing that door from being opened. It'll also be locked, but there is a seal, tamper-resistant seal, so make sure those stay on. And then you're going to set up the voter qualifying table. That's what a distance marker looks like. Remember to arrange your voting equipment and your booths. You'll get cardboard booths that you'll set up on tables that give you some privacy, or gives the voters privacy. You want to make sure they can cast their ballots in secret. Make sure you set it up where people cannot disrupt folks who are voting or see the ballots of those who are voting. If there's any poll watchers, they should be able to monitor the voting area. Make sure it's adequately lit. Post required information. There is no required information for this election, so that is struck out because we have no write-ins to post. I'll skip this too. We don't know what our carts are going to be looking like, and they're not going to be used for this election, so we'll just skip on to that. Eventually there will be a Verity setup video as part of my presentation, but because we're going to have Verity videos posted separately that you'll need to watch, make sure you watch the Verity videos. And of course there will be field guides for you to follow, just like the old HART equipment that we had before. There are field guides for the Verity equipment we have now. They will be in your supply bag. So on the ideal voter table, you'll have your poll book, your statement of residence forms, and your Verity print set up with a printer and that Verity print device, or two. You may have more than one. That's the one that will print the paper ballot for the voter. On your other voter table, your work table, you'll have your provisional ballot stuff, list of provisional voters, notice to provisional voter in case they have to come to my office to cure an ID, and request to cancel application to vote by mail. Might be some other forms in your bag that you'll want to put on that table. But that's your work table for your not ideal voter, and it's, nothing personal. It's just that voter's got issues that has to be cleared up before they can vote. This is a provisional envelope. This is the front, this is the back, and remember when you're having these filled out that the voter must sign this envelope. They also need to fill everything out on here. This is a voter registration application. So if this is a voter that is not in the system, they think they registered but we can't find them, make sure this is completely filled out so that we can get them registered by this front of this envelope. On the back, make sure that an election judge or one of the clerks, whoever's taking care of this voter, signs this on the back, on the left side. Okay? One more thing I'll mention while we're here is that with the new equipment that we have, there will be a paper ballot, of course, whenever you do provisional. It'll say provisional on top of the ballot. Those ballots will not scan. They'll be spit back out if you try to scan one of them on the Verity scanner. So that ballot will be folded up, and there will be white envelopes with your green envelopes for you to use as secrecy envelopes for the ballot. So the voter will take the folded up ballot, put it in the white envelope, seal that white envelope and the tag that comes off of the Verity print or the Verity touch writer, the little tag that the voter needs to sign his name and print his name on. That tag will also go in this green envelope separate from the privacy envelope. So they're both inside here, but only the ballot goes inside the white envelope that also goes in here. Okay? That's new. List of provisional voters. Every voter that votes provisional, you need to write their name on the list of provisional voters. Okay? It's very important that that gets filled out. And this is the notice to provisional voter for ID voters. This is just instructions on where to go to our office and what they need to bring with them for them to cure that provisional because they forgot their ID or whatever. Okay, this date, of course, is wrong. It'll have the date that is 6 days after Election Day on your new notice to provisional voter. And for anyone who brings in a ballot or doesn't bring a ballot in but comes up on the system that says that we sent them a ballot, you will have to fill out this form right here. That's another form that will be on that work table. We'll talk about that more earlier, or later. We won't talk about it earlier. Skipping along here. We will have new reconciliation log envelopes and for both early voting and election day. So not going to cover that here. We'll hopefully have some forms to show you in training class, and we'll add that as quickly as we can. So again, turn on and open your polls on the Verity touch writer and scanner as early as possible. And you're going to have to do a zero tape, so make sure you get going as quickly as possible. You're going to do the oaths. We have the statement of officer and oath of officer that must be filled out and signed by the presiding or alternate judge at each polling place. This is for election day. Only election day judges and alternate judges have to do this, and they can sign for each other on that form. The oath of election official is on the timesheet. It's the one we've been using for a long time. After taking the oath to serve as an election worker, you must wear a name tag. So make sure you have your name tags out. This is the form, the constitutional oath for presiding judge, and also the constitutional oath of office. And this is just briefly how you can fill this out. Already talked about insignias and emblems not within 100 feet of the front door of the building. Never ever influence a voter. That's a Class B misdemeanor. for you to indicate how a voter or how you want someone to vote. Media, cameras, and press are not allowed in the polling place or within 100 feet of a voting machine. People who are allowed in the polling place, a person who is accompanying a voter, such as a child under 18, with the parent who's voting, or a person assisting a voter, they must take the oath if they're assisting. A person acting as an interpreter must also be taking the oath to do that. And remember, you guys are all already, once you've done your oaths that we just went through, and the oath of official on the timesheet, you guys are all assistants if you need to be. So if the voter needs assistance and they didn't bring anybody with them, you guys fill these needs for the voter. And a poll watcher who presents a valid certificate of appointment for your location and training, of certificate of training to the presiding election judge, and they must be wearing a name tag. Poll watcher has to do the Secretary of State online training, and they have to give the presiding judge or lead early voting clerk a certificate of appointment. We just talked about that, but briefly, the certificate has to be in writing and signed by the appointing authority and by the watcher. So if you have any questions about that when a watcher shows up, just call our office. We'll help you figure out whether it's a valid certificate or not. They also have to identify, that certificate has to identify the election and the location the watcher's been appointed to serve. It can't just say early voting. There has to be a location on there, okay? Or election day. You know, we have 5 election day locations for this election. So we talked about the certificate of completion of the Secretary of State's online poll watcher training. That has to be one of the forms they give you. And there's a lot of stuff what a poll watcher is allowed to do. They're not allowed to just chit-chat with everybody. The only person that they should ever really ask questions of is the lead person, either the judge or the lead early voting clerk. And they're there just to watch for irregularities. If they see something that they think is weird, they may ask the lead person a question. But they're definitely not there to talk to voters, and they're not there to talk to just everybody else, election workers. They're not allowed to observe a voter a voter voting independently by themselves, or a voter being assisted by a person of the voter's choice. That would be someone who they brought with them. A watcher may not be present at the voting station when a voter is preparing the voter's ballot or being assisted by a person of his choice. That's law. If you are assisting a voter, then the poll watcher is allowed to be there and allowed to see what you're doing. And we're just quoting law, and a lot of this, it's converse with a voter, may not converse or communicate in any manner with the voter regarding the election. That's election law. And of course, they can't cause a disruption or a breach of the peace. And one thing, just so you know, they can be present at the polling place any time after the presiding judge arrives and may remain until the presiding judge and clerks complete their duties. Other people who are allowed: state election inspectors, peace officers who've been appointed, Secretary of State and their staff. Those are all people that are allowed, but they must be wearing a name tag. So, qualifying a voter, state-approved list A of photo IDs is required. Every voter who owns a photo ID from list A must use it to vote. Voter certificates are not required. They are handy, but they are not required. So you're going to check the photo. That's why we have a photo ID. You're going to check the expiration date and you're going to check the name. Photo IDs from list from the list A must not be expired more than 4 years to date unless the voter is age 70 or over. Then it can be expired indefinitely. The name must match exactly or be similar to the name on the poll book computer. So you're going to look the voter up on the poll book. Hopefully you can use the driver's license that they provided. Verify name and the name matches the database or is similar. Remember, address verification is done on the poll book by the voter at the end. So you're going to follow the instructions on the poll book to check in the voter. And remember, the address on the photo ID does not have to match what we have on our poll book. So these are various IDs that are from list A, and there's been some changes. These limited term, there's been discussion that if it is a limited term, which means the person, when they got the ID, was not a U.S. citizen, but they may have become one after that. So if you get one of these limited term, you'll just need to call our office. We'll do some research and try to figure out what you're supposed to do. But regular Texas driver's license cannot be expired more than 4 years unless the person's over 70. And this is just an election certificate. They don't expire for persons age 70 or older. They can't be expired more than 4 years otherwise. Handgun licenses. I'm sorry, that's a personal identification card. Same thing goes with it. It could say limited term or temporary visitor. If it does, call our office, because that doesn't automatically mean that this person is not a citizen. Texas handgun license, of course, can't be expired more than 4 years. There's all kinds of military identification cards. Some do not expire. Some have no expiration dates on them. Some are marked indef. Use your judgment, but it's probably okay as long as it doesn't have an expiration date and it's not expired more than 4 years and the person's not over 70. The U.S. citizenship or naturalization certificates, they have to have a photograph. The U.S. passport and passport cards, again, unexpired or expired less than 4 years. And all of this expired or less than 4 years is overridden by if the person is 7 years old or older. And then permanent exemption, if the voters applied for and received permanent exemption, it'll have an E at the end of the VUID number on their card. They have to present their card. And we have one voter in our county that has this exemption. So if they give you the card and you don't see an E, it's probably not that person. And I covered this already about limited term or temporary visitor. Permanent exemption has to be someone with a disability of 50% or more, and they can get the application and fill it out here at the voter registration's office and attach paperwork from Social Security Administration or Veterans Affairs. And once they do that, it's good for as long as the voter's registered in the same county. They do not need to complete a reasonable impediment declaration. They are legal to vote with just their voter registration card with the E on it. Remember, addresses. You do not have to match addresses between the voter registration database and the ID. So don't compare the ID address from whatever they give you to the address on the registered voter list. They're not required to match. The voter will confirm their address on the poll book, and that allows the voter to update their registration records if their address is changed or is wrong. So if the voter confirms that the poll book has their address wrong, you'll hit the back button and it'll pop up a little window and you'll hit yes. Then you'll hit the back button again and it'll pop up a little window and you'll hit yes again. Now you'll be at the check-in, at the check voter's name and address screen where it's asking you if these things match. And this time you'll tell it no, that the address is wrong. And it'll walk you through having the voter fill out a statement of residence form before they vote. And once they've done that and you check it for legibility, remember we got to be able to read these things, then you can resume checking in the voter and the voter will vote a regular ballot. Very possibly you've got other voters in line and you'll have to check the voter in by actually looking them up again when they get back to the front of the line. List B, supporting forms. I'm not going to go over this in much detail. It's mostly what people will probably bring would be like a bank statement or a current utility bill. They cannot be more than 2 months old. And there's just a gob of other stuff. One thing I always like to mention is an out-of-state driver's license is a List B supporting form of ID. There will be some of those in just about every election because it's so hard to get your driver's license. Your appointment at the DMV is usually so far ahead that a lot of times all you have is your previous state's driver's license. And remember, the address on whatever the document is from List B does not have to match what we have on the poll book. Okay? This is the reasonable impediment declaration, which is what you would fill out if a voter does not have a List A ID and they're having to provide something from List B. So this is filled out showing why they're having to use this and what they used. It has instructions on it. Little flow chart for you to figure out what to do. You'll have a laminated copy of this, just going through if everything matches, the voter votes a regular ballot. If they don't have an ID, but they have a B or whatever, this just walks you through all those steps. If you cannot find a voter in the poll book, call our office. That's just the way it is. If you can't find them, call us. If a voter's in suspense, what that means is something was returned to us undeliverable from the Postal Service, or an examination letter was sent but not returned. And a voter's placed in suspense so that when they come to vote, they get flagged, and you will force them to fill out a statement of residence, and that's the only way that a voter can become removed out of suspense. So even if their address is correct on their voter registration, have them fill it out anyway. That's the only way to get them off of there. Could be just a mistake by the post office that got them on there in the first place. I'd say that's probably about 75% of why people end up in suspense. So this is a statement of residence. It needs to be filled out completely and signed and dated. And remember, this needs to be legible. So if you get that, if the voter hands that to you and you can't read it, politely try to get them to correct it. And if you have to, ask them what this says, and then you handwrite it underneath that so we can read it. It's no good if it's not legible. And residency issues, it's kind of weird for a May election because a voter can move within the county and cause a situation where they can't vote for their old, like city. Let's say they move from Marble Falls to Burnet, and they're in the city of Burnett now, which is having an election, but they still are registered in the city of Marble Falls, that voter would not be able to vote unless they voted provisional, because these are all separate entities that are having elections. They're all on the same, we're all running them together jointly, but they are still separate jurisdictions that are having elections. So if a person's not registered inside the jurisdiction that's having an election, the person should not be able to vote. It's different when a county's having an election, because then the whole county is under the jurisdiction of the county. So if a voter moves from one corner to the other of the county, that's still in the county. So it gets a little weird, but anyway, and we're probably not going to have any limited ballots for this election, just because the logistics of doing that would be pretty slim. The only way that would probably happen would be if somebody moved from maybe Travis County into Burnett County, and they were in the Marble Falls ISD while they were in Travis County. So it's not likely to happen, but it could. So voter that moved into the county, if this was a general election, a county election, then we'd talk about that some more, but we're not going to talk about that. So when you look a voter up and they are on the system as having been mailed a mail ballot or have been requested a mail ballot, there's two things that you need to, or there's one question you need to answer. Does the voter have the ballot with them? If they do, they're going to fill out the cancel mail ballot form, surrender the ballot to you, and you're going to check them in on the poll book, and they're going to vote a regular ballot. If they don't have the ballot with them, they're still going to fill out the cancel mail ballot form and the provisional envelope. They're going to check in on the poll book, and they're going to vote a provisional ballot. Okay? So that's it. If they have it with them, they vote a regular ballot after they fill out the paperwork. If they don't have it with them, they're going to vote provisional. Person who's running the poll book check-in station, if the voter did not surrender the mail ballot, you're going to go through the mail ballot provisional voter process on the poll book. It'll prompt you on what to do. When the ticket prints, it'll have the voter's information on it, and their ballot style will be at the bottom. So this MF7 is the ballot style. Okay. Notice there's no barcode on this one. There will not be a barcode on a provisional tag that comes out of the poll book. It makes you enter the provisional manually, which is fine. It's not a whole lot more work. You just go over to the Verity Print or the Verity Touch Writer, and you tell it what ballot style, and you tell it that it's provisional. There's a checkbox for you to tell it it's provisional. When you have gotten the ballot set up for that voter on either the Verity Print or the Touch Writer, it will print on those units. It'll print this provisional ballot stub. This is similar to what we've done in the past, where you have a place for the voter to print their name and then sign this thing. I don't know why there's 3 lines here, but anyway, the voter just has to print their name and sign this. And this will go in the green envelope with the envelope that has the voter's ballot in it. And we'll talk about that just a little bit more here shortly. Request to cancel mail ballot. This is the form that I was talking about. And everybody will fill out this top section. The middle section where it says, I am surrendering my ballot, that's only for those who surrendering their ballot. If I do not have possession of my mail ballot, that person will sign here. So this person will fill out this and sign here. This person will fill out this and sign here. And then our folks, you will be filling out the rest of this for that voter. And this is the back of the provisional envelope for someone who is on the list but didn't bring their ballot, and you're doing a provisional, and it just says voter on list of people who voted early by mail, and voter has not canceled the mail ballot application. They'd have to have it with them for them to be able to cancel it and then vote in, a regular ballot. So this is a person who does not have it with them. Similar names. The law states that a voter's name on their ID must match exactly or be substantially similar to what we have on the poll book. I'm not going to cover this in a lot of detail because it's pretty simple. Almost everybody's name is similar if it's not a perfect match. But if there is nothing similar about the names on the driver's license compared to the poll book, they need to give you a different ID. And I'll show my one little example here. This is the driver's license mock-up for Jay Leno. It says 123 Texas Way, Austin, Texas, and gives date of birth. Over here it says James Douglas Muir Leno, 123 Texas Way, Austin, Texas, date of birth. As far as the name's concerned, the only thing here that is the same is Leno. But because it is the same, that is a similar name. It's not an exact match by any means, but it is a similar name match. And so you would also be able to use the date of birth as help for making a match. And you can use the address only positively. You can never use the address because remember, it doesn't have to match. So this could be wrong. The address could be different. But it's still the name and the date of birth will give you a reason to match this as a similar name. And the photograph obviously is a big part of this too. If somebody that looks like that came through with this driver's license, I'm going to say it's probably Jay, even though he doesn't live here. So voters with identical matches, you proceed as usual. Voters with similar name will only need to initial the affidavit, which pops up on the poll book screen because you say that it's not a perfect match, but it's similar. When you're viewing that voter's license and looking at your screen, you're going to tell the system this is either a perfect match or it's not. But if it's a similar name match, then it's going to pop up an extra screen for that voter to initial. If the name's not similar, in other words, it doesn't match anything at all, the voter needs to provide another ID. Assisting voters with disabilities, voters who are physically unable to mark the ballot and or cannot read the languages on the ballot may receive assistance. Okay, so voter has to qualify to receive assistance. I won't talk a whole lot more about voters with disabilities. I think you guys have heard it enough, and even if you're new, you know to treat people that have disabilities with respect. So we'll move on. So we talked briefly about provisional voters. There's three types. There's voters, registered voters that didn't bring their photo ID. That means they own one but didn't bring it with them. There's also the mail ballot voter without their ballot, so they didn't bring their ballot with them. And then there's the voter who's not found in the poll book. That one's highlighted because you should always call our office for help if you can't find a voter. Okay? Let us help you. They may not be in there. They may be in there with the name misspelled or something stupid, but call our office for number 3. Okay? The list of provisional voters, probably mentioned that earlier, but you need to make sure you put the name of the voter, every single voter who votes provisional for whatever the reason, you are going to put their name on this list. So this list should be on your table with the provisional stuff. This is the notice to provisional voters that are voting without their ID. These are the ones that can cure at my office. This is a map to get to my office. Gives them the date. Of course, this date's wrong, but it'll give you the date will be on here, the real date that the voter will have to get to my office and show me one of these 7 forms of ID. Okay? That's the only reason that you would give this form to a voter. If they're a mail ballot voter that didn't bring their mail ballot, or if they're a voter that's not on the list, there's nothing for them to cure. So you would not give them this notice right here. This is only for a voter who's voting provisional because they forgot or misplaced their photo ID. Front of this, remember, is a voter registration application, so make sure that this is completely filled out. If this is a voter who said they went to the driver's license bureau and we never got their voter registration, make sure you've put their driver's license number on the front of this, because without that we cannot open a case with the DMV to find out if they did indeed go there to fill this thing out, or to fill out a voter registration. And a lot of these actually do count because this information is there and the DPS says yes, they did try to register. So on the back of it, if it is a voter who thinks they went to the DMV, make sure you check the 7. Or if you don't see a 7 on the back of your envelope, some old ones might still be running around. Just write DPS down here next to where you sign. That'll trigger us to open a case with the DPS. Temporary exemptions, always vote provisional. Voters that have a religious objection or have lost their ID due to a natural disaster, they must apply for a temporary exemption during the 6-day cure period at the voter registrar's office. So this is another voter who would get that notice of voting without their ID, so they know where to come to do that paperwork. We talked about the permanent exemption. If they come in and say they want a permanent exemption but they haven't applied yet, you'll vote them provisional, and they will have to come to my office during the 6-day cure period. So this is kind of what you want to do with your provisional stuff. We don't use the green provisional combination forms anymore because everybody checks in on the poll book, but you've got the big folder or big flap there for you to keep your list of provisional voters where you are going to put your provisionals in the bag. Curbside. Most of you have done this before, so it's not so new, but this is the sign that you'll get for you to put out in front of your building wherever the best place is for curbside, so that a voter can call our office. This is not the real number, but it will call a cell phone in our office, and we will find out where they're at, and we will communicate with you guys about the voter being outside. If it is a curbside, once you have been alerted that there's a curbside, what you're going to do is you're going to take the poll book out of its stand, take it outside to the vehicle, and you'll use the voter's photo ID to look the voter up. Once you find them, you'll check the voter in on the poll book. Once the voter has signed the poll book and you have completed the check-in, you'll go back inside, and as soon as you place the poll book back into its stand and it locks down, the little ticket will print with the barcode for the ballot style. So you'll scan the ticket at the Verity print to print the ballot. You'll place the ballot on a clipboard. You'll get a little privacy folder. It'll probably just be a manila folder or something like that. And you'll take it out to the vehicle for the voter to cast their ballot. You'll give them the clipboard and a pen. And once they vote their ballot, you put the voted ballot in the privacy folder and take it inside, place it into the Verity scan device to cast the ballot. Okay? Very simple and lightweight, I might add. So at the end of the day, you're going to be closing your polls, and you're going to follow the end of day checklist that's located in the notebook. If it is closing time, make sure you identify the last voter at 7 o'clock and do what's necessary to stop more voters who arrive after closing time from getting in line. And I always say, if you walk outside and you see a car pulling up and it's 7 o'clock, be human and let those people, Lord knows they may have driven all the way from Dallas to be there. So let them, let them get in line and just don't let anybody else that comes in after that. And yes, you do have to run a tally report, so be patient and let your tally report run. By the way, it will not be an option for any evening of early voting. You'll never ever run a tally report during early voting. So you're going to place all your completed forms into the bright red or burgundy, depending on which election it is, zippered bag. So all your completed forms go in the bag. And that is basically it for this election. We do have a website. It's burnettcountyelections.com. If you have any questions about anything, you can call this number. A lot of the information that you might be looking for is on our website, but you're always welcome to call our office for anything that you need. So please make sure you write this number down. If you didn't learn anything else today, watching this video, make sure you write this number down, because that's the one thing you're going to need to get your way through this process, okay? Thank you again for everybody who's working, and we will talk to you soon.